Now I'll be welcoming Martin Whyte from PwC. We'll be hearing about from data strategy to a scalable data mesh, how to successfully navigate the journey. Martin Whyte is a partner in PwC's technology consulting practice and is leading the digital operations data and analytics team. He has more than 16 years of experience in the area of data analytics and is an expert in data-driven transformation. The stage is yours.
Thank you very much for introducing me. And as you can see, Martin Whyte is two persons, obviously, because I brought a colleague of mine. But we will introduce ourselves in a moment. I would say let's let the last people enter the room. And I'm happy that you're all here and that I have the pleasure to talk to you about data mesh. I could do now the joke to have a hand who has not heard about data mesh today already, because most of you most likely had one or the other session talking about data mesh already. But hopefully we can add some more additional value for you, because we are coming from a slightly different angle. One, two, we brought a very concrete example, and that's why Antonios is here, from a client, a very big one, where we implemented that from an organizational and also from a technical perspective. Like I already said, my name is Martin Whyte. I'm a partner within the technology consulting practice of PwC, doing data analytics now for 16 years. You can say I've never done anything else. I know nothing else than that. And I'm pretty sure that that will continue for the rest of my career, to be honest. Maybe from your side, Antonios.
Thanks. Hey everyone, I'm Antonios Marinos. I'm also working at PwC in the data and analytics department. And I'm working since more than 1 year with one of our big customers implementing our data mesh, and that's what I will be talking for today.
Good, let's start. And to be honest, his part will be by far more exciting than mine, because I'm doing a bit the slide work around, and then he will tell about how it really is on the ground. So I will try to speed up to give Antonios more space, basically. Yeah. So I think it doesn't make any sense to now boil the ocean and tell you that data is important, because I think everybody knows that. That's the reason why we are here. But what we are seeing is, and that's what we try to condense a bit, that there are different trends in different industries. So we are working in retail, we are working in the chemical industry, and I brought the concrete example now of the industrial manufacturing industry. And what we can see is that data is pivotal for all those industry, in that case specifically for the industrial manufacturing industry, to drive all of their transformation, be it the finance transformation, be it the smart factory transformation, be it the supply chain transformation. And what we've got out of that is that there are certain trends, right? I will not go to all of those details, but I think what is really important is that data is not there for itself, and data analytics is not there for itself, but it always follows what the business needs to do, and those are exactly those trends. And if we walk into the first one, new digital business models, right? I'm not sure how many people know that Adamos, for instance, is a platform built by mid-size manufacturers at the end as a platform, and Dürr is one of them, DMG Mori is the other one. And what they did is, they said, well, what we would like to achieve is that all of the machines that we are creating, that they speak the same language, that we provide a platform to build additional services based on that platform that we can sell to our customers, to have pre-built things like preventive maintenance, for instance, OEE optimization and stuff like that. That's one. Two is, and that is an example where we as PwC have the honor to support ZF. I thought I just even saw a person from ZF being here. We helped ZF in their journey, which is a smart factory transformation at the end. That means connecting all of their 190 factories from an MES perspective into one, they call it DMP, Digital Manufacturing Platform at the end. And basically, why do they do that? Yes, they want to optimize production at the end, right? So really scalable use cases. We started with one plant, and now we are rolling it out together with them to all the other plants. The question that always comes is, well, if everybody has these big visions, why is not everybody really successful with those journeys, right? I think most likely also everybody in the room already heard this POC hell term at the end, right? So there are a lot of analytical journeys that start as a POC, but then they end with a POC, and you never really create any real impact or value within the organization. And the reason behind that, and most likely you can even fill 10 slides with the reasons, but just a few of them, right? And one of them obviously is everything you are doing there, you need very specific resources and they are scarce. And if you don't do the right prioritization, you will fail at the end because yes, you can start small, but then if you need to scale it, you need more people, and if you don't prioritize, you will not have them. Secondly, most start with very big ambitions in terms of, well, what do we would like to achieve? Coming back to the example, for instance, smart factory transformation. But then when it comes to where do I get the data from to do exactly that, and maybe not only having a USB stick, getting out of one machine the data for that, but to scale it across the whole shop floor within one factory or even all factories across the world, completely different story, and then it really gets hard to really get the data together. Then if we look into, and I would combine now the technology zoo and also the corporate politics. Well, I think I've seen companies with good ideas. It was supply chain resilience at the end, and it took them 1 year to decide, should we do it on SAP technology or should we do it on Microsoft technology? So 1 year of waste because it was not clear what is the technology pattern that we use for certain archetypes of solutions at the end, right? And if that is not solved, you lose a lot of time, if you will. And then, well, coming back to also the prioritization issue, I think all of us face a talent gap. It's not only in consulting, we have really issues to find the right people for our projects, but I think for the industry it's exactly the same. Yeah? And what we think is the only way to overcome this is to attack it from a strategic perspective, which means we often call them data strategy projects at the end, that the companies start to really strategically think through how to really embrace data and make use of data. And that means, and that's what I said already before, you always need to start with what is the business need at the end, right? So that means, well, you have internal things that come out of your business strategy, but also things that come out of the markets. Your fierce competitor that has something new that you also need to have, or regulation that change. And everything you need and want to do needs to translate into value at the end. It could be on the one hand side growth or efficiency gains, or it could be compliance and risk mitigation at the end. But how do you do that? We think 3 things are important. One is you need to clearly define what is your ambition at the end. That means the aspiration that you have. You sometimes call it the North Star that you have. So where do you want to go? We are working, and that's exactly the example that Antonius will detail later a bit, with a large Swedish furniture retailer, which is IKEA. And their business vision is to succeed in the omnichannel reality, and out of that we derive together with them the vision. What does that mean for data to exactly do that, right? So you need to understand how you get data together across the different channels, connect it, have something like a customer 360 to understand what they need and what they want. If you have that, the next step is the use cases that you want to do. And that comes back to what I talked about in terms of prioritization before, because you clearly need to tie the use cases that you prioritize to the business needs that you have. It's nice from a technology perspective to do things with web crawling because you're interested in that, but if that doesn't feed into any of the real value-adding use cases at the end, it doesn't make any sense to do that. So you need to have a clear portfolio of use cases you want to build, and now to close the loop, based on the use cases that you have, there you then decide what are the capabilities that I need to build finally to fully support the use cases that I would like to serve, which then again serve the business purpose based on the aspiration. So that's the closed loop that we see at the end. But what does that specifically mean if we look a bit into the capabilities part? From our perspective, and that's also when we come to the data mesh topic from IKEA in a moment, and I think it's also, hopefully at least, because I've not had the chance to look into all of the talks, in the other talks, when we talk about capabilities from a data analytics perspective, only one part of it is technology. From our perspective, you always need to look at least equally in terms of importance into what is about organization, so people topics, right? Upskilling topics, finding the right org structure at the end. The process topic, so to change at the end how you operate, so DevOps is one of the examples that you can make in that area. And then obviously surrounding is the cultural change that you need to embrace really data as part of your daily working, and to embrace that you do fact-based decision making at the end in all of the areas, right? And if we look into the capabilities that you need from our perspective in all of those dimensions, we see 6 core capabilities from our perspective that are needed if you want to excel from a data analytics perspective. One is data architecture at the end. And you can combine architecture and data architecture. And that is more or less, if we already think a bit in terms of data mesh, how is your corporate data model at the end? So what are the data domains that are relevant? How do they relate to each other? And how do you structure them at the end? Obviously, this has a technical impact. So how do you model it? Where do you have the metadata around? So the data catalog, for instance, around your data domains. And also from an organizational perspective. So where do you put the governance or the responsibility for all of these? Next one is data governance. Obviously, and this is also one of the things that we see, if we talk about availability of data, it's not only the problem that data is not available, but it's unclear who's really responsible for that data. Maybe there is nobody. So is it the process owner, or do we have somebody who's specifically responsible for the data? Who do I need to ask if I want to use it? And what do I do if I find nobody? So all of those topics that are relevant in terms of governance of data are, from our perspective, extremely important to excel from a data analytics perspective, if you will. Data processing is everything when it comes to movement of data, computing, so loading of data, transforming of data, if you will, and also storage of data, right? So what is the data platform that you would like to have? Also something that you most likely will talk about in a few moments. And what are the components that you need? And again, it's the question not only from a technology perspective. There you can talk about, well, 20 years back you only had relational, now we have also non-relational database, how do you combine them? But it's also the question in terms of, well, what exactly is the right operating model for that? What is the right operating model for my platform? Is it a central one? Is it also a decentral one? Do I only have the infrastructure below in a central governance, or do I have everything in a central governance? Then looking into data quality. I think even though in some cases the data is available, the problem that we often have is that the data quality is quite poor, right? So, and what do you do if the data that you get is not the one that you would expect? It could be that the data is false, it could be that you expect it in a different format, it could be that it's ambiguous at the end, and all of those things need to be sorted out. And again, like I already said, you need the right processes to detect it, and then you need the right governance to decide who's responsible to change it. And obviously you also need the systems to detect it, but then also obviously to change it at the end. Yeah? And then maybe to finalize with, because I would omit the data protection part, the data analytics part. This is everything when it comes to making use of data, right? So it starts with where my heritage a bit is BI at the end, right? So everything that I need to understand how my business runs, be it in supply chain, be it classically in finance, be it in sales, but it obviously then goes on to everything that I use to optimize my shop floor, to get transparency in supply chain, maybe automatic decision making, demand forecasting that I optimize via models, all of this to make use for the benefit of the company. There you need to excel. And again, it is a question in terms of what is the org structure for that? What is the right level of skills of people that you need, right? What kind of data literacy programs do you need to bring the people to the right level to make use of the data? And I'm not only talking about data scientists, but I'm more talking about people in all the organizational parts need to understand what are the tools and how do I use them to make data part of my everyday life at the end of my everyday decision making. Yeah? If we now look into, and I think I need to speed up a bit to give you enough time at the end, if we move on to keep that rather short, what we have seen is, I think uncoordinated is still there, but most of the companies are not at that stage anymore. I've done for the last 12 years a lot of data warehousing projects, so very centralized, very rigid in terms of how the structure is, clear levels of I load into a staging environment. I have some dear friends here out of that past where we built a lot with airlines, we had CPG companies where we built exactly that. And then over time it moved, because that was only with relational databases, you only had structured data in there, and then you moved into this data lake or data lakehouse, which is a bit a combination of the patterns of a data lake and a data warehouse. And now we are exactly at that tipping point where everybody thinks now, well, do we need a different pattern? Is it too slow how we do it? Is it too rigid how we do it? And this is a bit where, from my perspective also, without meaning that disrespectful, the hype around the data mesh comes from, to federate the way how we treat, store, and make use of data, give it into the different functional units where there is a higher knowledge around the data, and maybe even around the knowledge how to make use out of that data. Yeah? Maybe before we move on and I would then pass directly to you, what we see is you need a certain maturity to decide what is the right point in terms of, do I need it more centralized or can I already decentralize what I would like to do when it comes to data analytics? Why? Because if you have a quite immature organization and then you try to already federate it into the different functional units, you will not be successful. Why not? Because you will not have the right you will not have the critical mass within the organization, because you need certain level of, obviously, of people that can work with the data, so data scientists, data engineers, and so on. And on the other hand side, if you're immature as an organization, you also will not have the right processes to do all of that in the proper way. But I think one good example of an organization that has a quite good maturity already and is exactly moving on that way is IKEA, and handing directly over to you.
Thank you, Martin. So I will talk a bit about the client example that Martin just mentioned. So in the last years, our client identified that to continue being a successful company, they need to become more data-driven. And to become more data-driven, one of the goals is to implement a scalable data mesh for the complete organization. Now, if we look back, the company has already gone through many data evolutions. So around 20 or 30 years ago, data analytics, or BI then, was mostly done within single domains, with limited collaboration between the different domains. And then as a second step, some new components came in, like cloud components or big data stores, like data lakes, which also enabled new use cases. I would say around 10 years ago, these enabled use cases in machine learning and AI. And around that time, for our specific examples, they already started collaborating more between the domains. So they had some shared data warehouses or shared data lakes, but which were still being driven by IT teams and not by the business teams. And when it comes to data exchange, we did not have something fully standardized. So on the one hand, it could be that data is exchanged via CSV files between different teams. On the other hand, it can be that teams are reading directly from a database copy or some blob or data lake storage. And now, since a few years, we are on the way to transform to a scalable data mesh for the complete organization. And one of the main goals is to enable more collaboration and make data easily accessible. And how we are doing that? So we are standardizing the interfaces between different teams. That means that we are creating service level agreements, or as we call them, data products. And when somebody from one domain wants to share data with another team, that is easily how we call discoverable. So teams can see that this data is available in some data catalog, and it's easy also to subscribe to that data set and then consume it. And in the specific client example, we are also doing that with a data platform. And the overall goal of the platform is to make it easy for the teams to create insights. So we are abstracting the complexity which might come with data infrastructure in the cloud, with access management, or with the best practices that are used in data engineering, data science, or DevOps like CI/CD. And we are developing that and reusing that, allowing teams to reuse that. And of course, if one team has something good, then we can also incorporate that into the data platform and share that also with other teams. Now, this year, we did a big study on the topic of data mesh at PwC. And one part of that study was the interview with our client. And more specifically, it was with a DNA platform manager. And one of the questions was when do you believe a company should go for a data mesh? And part of the responses was, is the company large enough to support a data mesh? So is the organization federated? Because, for example, in our case, the organization was already federated, so data mesh was a very natural fit for it. Are the people committed to the data vision? So do the people working for that company want to drive these initiatives? Is the organization committed to make people more data-driven? And how do you have top management support for this? And I would sum up these points by saying that it's not that we are doing, or our client is doing a data mesh just to do a data mesh, but it's being that they want to improve as a company, and they have identified that becoming more data-driven is one of the prerequisites, and then implementing a data mesh is the right fit for them. And yeah, and as part of our study, I see we are over time, but...
Oh. I have not even seen evil eyes, so well, maybe we take also the next slot. So. No.
Maybe if you can wrap it up in 1 minute, I don't want to...
That's not a problem, sure. You can even wrap it up in 30 seconds and leave 30 seconds for a question. That's not a problem. I think the good thing is, well, we are anyway there, so if you want to talk about that with us, let's do it. We can talk about that specific client example, and we can also talk about the study. We have the study there. There's a lot more in, and we have even a large interview with the client in there with another tons of insights, I would say. But maybe to condense it, what is also his view on how to be successful in that area? Well, first of all, you need to get senior stakeholder involvement and buy-in, otherwise you will not be successful. I think that's, most of the people know that, but still most of the people fail with that because they are not able to convey the right message at the end and to get senior buy-in for this. Secondly, if you have that and convey that and also have in the organization the right level of trust into this, let's lay the foundation for the data mesh. And what we started with is, together with them already half a year ago, I would say, to prepare the organization for data domains. We introduced the key data domains. We introduced the organization around the key data domains. We applied the right people into the roles for that. After we have done this and they have started to create their first data products, the question is, well, what comes next? And then you need to professionalize all of that, right? So what we are now doing, this is what we will do in this year. We will optimize the platform for scale, which means is we professionalize the way how we treat the processes around DevOps. We automate the platform to be ready for scaling it into by far more products at the end. So those are the next steps that we are doing. And then this is the last step, obviously, open the platform, democratize the data, have the most freedom the people can get with the data to use it at the end. Yeah. So happy to talk to you. I think now we need to leave the stage. I understand
Indeed.
that. Yeah. But thank you very much for attending. And as we said, we are there. If you want to talk, let's talk. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for your insightful talk and also for making it practical.